Hello and welcome to our 12th episode of the unofficial SAP on Azure video podcast. Today is October 9th, and together with Robert and Goran, we're here to talk about anything related to SAP on Azure. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
So this week we said we wouldn't invite a special guest because I think among the three of us we have prepared some demos ourselves. We had some time looking at some of the Ignite announcements and reproduce some of the demos of the scenarios that were mentioned there. So I think, or hopefully, this will be again a very interesting episode for you. But before we go there, let's quickly take a look at some of the announcements or news from this week. Let me start. So Marco Dorn released a blog saying that now the Kyma runtime is available on trial. So if you are interested in Kyma and the whole Kubernetes runtime or Kyma runtime, that is available on SAP Cloud Platform now for quite some time. The good thing is now it's really available on the trial environment. So you can go there. You need to set up some entitlements. Similar like what you do when you use SAP Cloud Platform in general in the trial environment, that you just need to go there, and there's some nice getting started informations. But with this, you can now enable the Kyma runtime on the SAP Cloud Platform trial environment. If you don't know what this is good for, then there's another blog that talks about CAP, the Cloud Application Programming Model. That is, and you can now deploy CAP on the Kyma runtime. So basically, you can start with your Kyma runtime on trial, and then you can start building your CAP applications and also deploy them on Kyma. So I think this can also be a very interesting scenario. Here, Uwe created a nice blog that outlines some of the steps. There's also an example there that you can deploy. So I think, or in here, there's the instruction tutorial. So this is also something that might be quite interesting for you.
One question, is this only for new stuff, or we can also expect that SAP will migrate some of the current architecture in this direction?
Well, I actually think the whole Kyma runtime aspect is getting more and more traction also within SAP. Mm-hmm. So I would expect that at least some of the functionalities, some of the applications that are already available from SAP, that they will also be migrated on the Kyma runtime, or that they leverage the Kyma runtime. I mean, my understanding is if you look at the whole Commerce Cloud, the whole Sales Cloud from SAP, that they are already heavily using the Kyma runtime, the whole extension framework there. And I'm sure that other applications will also follow this idea.
Okay.
But I think it's definitely worth to take a look at Kyma. And I know it's fairly new, and especially new on the SAP Cloud Platform. And especially when you look at the SAP developer community, then the trial environment obviously is really something very important. And now that Kyma is already also available on SAP Cloud Platform trial now, I think that's also something that is quite interesting.
But does it mean that container what is running under Kyma runtime, if I understand correctly, can I move that container and simply host it somewhere else?
Yes, absolutely. So if you go to the Kyma project, so let me actually check. I think Kyma is an open source project, right? Mm-hmm. And you can run Kyma on any Kubernetes. Okay. Actually, there's a beautiful documentation here that talks about deploying Kyma on Azure, but also on, I mean, to be fair, also on other cloud providers. So you can definitely do this. What SAP is saying here, they're offering a managed service there, so you don't have to care about running your own Kyma runtime on your environment. That's what SAP is doing here.
Okay.
And maybe one other thing that was just nice to read, or interesting to read. I guess everyone knows the Hana Express edition, and Thomas Young was able to deploy the Hana Express edition on Windows subsystem for Linux, so WSL2. I mean, he highlights that this is certainly not something supported exactly. Here, this is the result of my personal experimentation, but I still thought that this is really a nice scenario. I mean, we've all seen the demos from Scott Hanselman and how really you can use WSL on your Windows machine and then still very easily interact with solutions that run on Linux.
So we can say who says that we cannot run Hana on Windows, yeah?
Yeah, now we can.
and you can those subsystem also choose. You can say I want a SLES, which I had on my PC. You can say a Red Hat, you know. So I mean, this is opening a new frontiers, a new potential gate. Let's see, it's becoming really fun,
Yeah, so Thomas was using OpenSUSE in his.
Okay.
He had both exactly. So he had both, but he was deploying it on OpenSUSE. But you're right, and I mean, I'm also using it. It's really, really nice. In the past, I was always using. I know this is only a very, very small use case, but I was always using PuTTY when I needed to SSH to a machine. Now I have my WSL running, and I do an SSH connection from there. So it's.
And I'm doing the same, and basically I'm also using that the terminal Linux system to access the Windows file, which I may need, you know.
Same with me.
Scripts, so it's really fun.
Do you want that I sold you some tricks how to use Windows terminal?
Always.
Yes.
Take a look.
You're a seller guy.
Yeah. Take a look now. This is from Scott Hasselman blog, actually. So this is a video.
You're not sharing the screen.
I'm not sharing. Really? Are you sure?
No, I think
I don't see. Okay, now.
Okay. So this is terminal. So you have option to select everything. I have a slice like a underlying Linux system. So now if I place here, I'm opening another tab. So I have two tabs. But if you want to have a split the window, so what you do, for example, you have here Azure, and you, I think, press Alt. And then, no, not, you see, and now you have another. Or you can say, okay, I will open a new one, and the new one, I will just select what I want, and in parallel, I have this.
Okay.
So I can have it in parallel, and I think with Alt Shift, I think you can move it. Yeah, you see, bigger, smaller.
That's really nice. And
so we need a Microsoft to improve the Linux usability.
Okay, let's don't go there.
Okay.
Cool. Good. So let me quickly take back the screen sharing. I have two other things, or at least one other thing that I quickly want to mention. Tobias Hoffmann had created some uproar, I would say, in the SAP community a few weeks back, where he talked about the SAP Cloud Platform in general, taking off SAP Neo Trial and stuff like that. And here, he just yesterday, he wrote a blog about the core values of SCP services, and I really like a lot of things that he mentions there. And basically, what he's really saying, and I fully agree with him there, is that here he says it's about getting SAP DNA into SCP services. Basically, what he's saying is, look, SCP is not necessarily a platform where SAP needs to offer standard technology components, but it's really much more about these business processes, business functionality. He has some examples here of a customer in Brazil, where here it is, where it's all about exchanging the information, but the real value add of an SCP could be from a taxation service, the translation hub, workflow services, or something like that. So really, where SAP Cloud Platform can provide this business value. And I think that's also what SAP is now with the business technology platform, BTP. I think that's where SAP is going. And right now, maybe they're in this
just below
intersection.
down where you selected that text. Exactly. So he mentioned just next sentence services that you can add to your, for example, Azure web app in a modular Lego-like way.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And again, for here, especially something like this taxation service, Google, Amazon, ourselves, we are not going to build, I guess, a taxation service. That's not our core business. We might provide the technology that someone can build a taxation service, but that's for me one of the real value adds that can come with the SAP Cloud Platform. So I really like this blog because it was echoing a lot of the things that how I think about the SAP Cloud Platform, and I am a strong believer that there is a big value add in the SAP Cloud Platform. So I'm still promoting it a lot with my customers. But I think he explained this pretty nicely in this blog about, well, what should SAP probably focus on.
Yeah, but I mean, that was all. I mean, we discussed about that, I think, during the duet time and all those SOAP time and all, SOA time and so on. I mean, the somehow SAP is somehow is not successfully going in the understanding that if they provide just business services, they will not lose anything. They will just extend their value. Yeah? But on other side, they are always trying to offer that like a big box again, like Fiori and everything. But I think this is exactly what you mentioned. SAP should focus on business services because this is the value of SAP. And then just leave that anybody can implement UI in any technology they want. Because who cares, so to say, because you have business services, you have identity management, and that's all what I need. If I want to use JavaScript, if I use Node.js or C#, who cares? I will just implement the UI for my customer. Yeah? And this should be, in my perspective, way to go. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Cool. Good, then we have one more topic, a blog post about SAP IQ in an HA solution using Azure NetApp files. I think, Goran, you also brought this up.
Yeah, so that's, I would say, an interesting blog, useful. I mean, talking about SAP IQ database, not ASA. It's a different thing, and high availability using the pacemaker, what we can see, and they use SBD as a fancy mechanism, but using ANF as a shared storage. Really nice blog, kind of blessed by our engineering. I mean, it's not part of at least not yet a part of official documentation, but I mean, it's been improved, so to say, in some way, indirect way. Yeah. If the customer have IQ, and they have a need and they are running on Linux. Okay, here's an example about the / Linux. Mm-hmm. I believe with the pacemaker, I believe it should be probably possible with Red Hat as well, but very detailed step how to do it, how to configure it, how to test it, how to manage it, with the screenshots. So I would say, there is a way to do it. Customer who would love to use it. Yeah, nice blog. Yeah, very detailed. A bit
blog,
long, but basically a kind of small documentation, so to say.
Exactly, and I think it's not bad that it's long because
no, exactly. Yeah.
Code snippets and stuff like that they can just
correct.
Copy and paste, probably, hopefully. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. That's it from what I wanted to share. Robert, over to you.
Okay.
Things.
So, okay, I already sell you the Windows terminal.
That was a good start.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So one point, I'm not sure is this part of Ignite or not, but I think it's part of those announcements around Ignite. And I think it's very interesting. This Azure Hybrid Benefit, we already have that for our Windows and SQL offering. So actually, Azure Hybrid is all about migrating existing licenses to something new, to new Azure environment. Yeah, and now we have the Azure Hybrid Benefit for Linux preview, and everything is actually going around this sentence here. So, for example, if I'm using today Red Hat or the SUSE Linux in Azure, and I'm going over pay-as-you-go, so I'm testing something, my proof of concept, so I'm not sure what I need on the end, but when I'm done with proof of concept, I will go to another step, maybe in piloting or maybe in a final productive landscape. And now I want to convert from this pay-as-you-go licensing model to bring your own license model. And now this is actually, as I mentioned, in preview. So a customer or partner can register it here over this page and be part of this preview program. And it's a very nice feature because now we have option to very easily switch from one licensing model to another licensing model, also for both Linux, what we are currently supporting, SUSE and Red Hat.
One question: can you go back? Meaning from fix, bring your own license to pay as you go? Do you know, maybe? I don't know if that would be the use case.
I mean, you know, I for sure I have no answer for that. I'm just thinking, okay, what is
does it make
scenario?
sense? I mean, the scenario is basically the only motivation would be to you get something cheaper, right? So I mean, a question.
I mean, you know, scenario probably can go in direction that you make mistake, that you somehow deploy something and then you discover later that you don't need that part of landscape 24/7. Yeah,
for example,
and you somehow want to go back. To go.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe it is nice. I think we can try to figure out, okay, what that hybrid benefit for Linux is covering at all.
But probably those,
maybe we'll have on the end everything what we are discussing. I mean,
maybe for those 24/7 business critical running all the time or most of the time, that would be your own license would make sense in a financial term.
Yeah, but you know, if you are going in the direction of what we are advocating, that you should monitor your own landscape, and probably you'll discover that some part of landscape you will like to change. Yeah, flexibility of the cloud. Probably then your question makes sense, because probably you will like to switch back to pay-as-you-go.
Right.
Okay, it's a good question. Yeah, probably will be covered in general availability from that program perspective. Yeah, okay. So next is about load balancers. So when we are talking about load balancer, just short overview. When we are talking about this balancing, actually, in most cases we are exposing one IP and we are somehow balancing cross different tiers. What we have for like this in this example, we have a public load balancer, we have an internal load balancer. Also, what is very important, that load balancer understand our concept of availability zone, so we can have this zone redundant standard load balancer. We are using that heavily in our SAP landscape when we are deploying cross availability zones. Also, load balancer can be zonal, so that means that I can somehow, like in this picture here below, that I can somehow dedicate the load balancer per one zone, so I can control what is happening cross zone in that way. But what is new, what is in preview, now I have a cross region load balancer. So that was always the issue in disaster recovery scenario or complex custom landscape, where I need to have option to somehow load balance across the regions. And now we have this option with cross region load balancer. And there's some, HR scenarios like here, what I mentioned, how I can actually, when I can use it. And the concept is very similar. Actually, what we are doing is that we are introducing something which is called home regions. And home regions are actually this cross region load balancer endpoints, and they are balancing cross other participant regions. Yeah, so they are somehow doing the handshake between different regions. So it's, as I mentioned, it's in preview, very, very interesting. And I think I know from my perspective, from my experience, that customers are asking a lot about that solution, especially in disaster recovery scenarios. And I think it's very nice that we finally have something which is covering that topic. Now we are covering, I think, all those cross regions, cross zones, multiple zones, zone specific, and of course, standard balancing options, what we have in normal small landscapes, and private load balancer and so on. But now we are somehow complete packages there.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I want to discuss about one new feature what we have. It's called Azure Resouce Mover. Is actually all about what I mean, the name is already describing what it's about. It's moving resources from one endpoint to another endpoint. What is very important to understand that we already have some option how to move between subscription, between resource groups. So this is always covered with different options what we have in the portal or PowerShell command line interface. We can also use Azure Site Recovery for that. But now we have one very nice tool which we can use to move the resources from currently. As you see from UI perspective, you see move options. We now have only Azure regions. I assume that we'll probably have more options here in the future. But what is the story about is just if you get started, you select the subscription from where you want to move something, and you say, okay, in which region? You need to select the region where you have something, and then where you want to move to. For example, I want to move to East US 2 region. And then you select the resources, which is something like this, and you just say done, and actually you are selecting those resources. What you will get in Azure Resouce Mover, for example, then you will get the list of your resources. I always start that, I don't want to wait. And then you have different phases, So you see there's a validate dependency. You can validate, is everything okay? Can you really move all those group resources together in another region? Because there's some resource dependencies, so you need to be sure that everything is okay. So after that step, actually it's described here. Now I move. It's here move overview. So you will see there's different steps. So you have first validate dependency, then you prepare it, then you have initial move. Because you are replicating, you have two options. You have always stateless resources like VNet is stateless, there's no state of that, and stateful like virtual machine, for example. And of course, when you execute the initial move, you need to stop the. You should expect that machine will be stopped during that process. And on the end, if you want to really finalize that, you can commit move. So you are moving that to another region. So that means, for example, if I'm going that step and I just click validate dependency, he will just go in the validate, is everything okay? So this is not steps which will be done in a few seconds. So I will not simply wait for that. But it's very nice option what we now have to move between different regions. Before if we want to do that, it's done. For example, now you see is now in prepare pending state. So now I can switch to prepare state. So I'm somehow controlling every step what I want to execute during those migration phase. Before, I remember when I want to move between different regions, I need to copy. I need to do, for example, snapshot virtual machine, copy it in Azure blob in another region, then from that blob again snapshot and create. I mean, it's can be done over the scripting, but was hard job. Now we have that actually in supported directly in the portal. And I think it's very nice. There are some few, because it's preview, it's some few bugs in UI, but I mean, it's nothing. So nothing special. I already successfully moved, so it's working. So it's very nice feature.
And DVMs are stopped or will be stopped.
Actually, during the initial phase, when you move, they will be stopped. But if you start to create this resource mover steps, machine need to be running because they will deploy the Azure Resource Manager agent there, and this Azure Resource Manager agent will replicate that on other side. So you need to have a running machine, but on the end, machine will be stopped and move on other side.
Yeah,
but you will actually then you can decide, okay, do you want to delete this process here, because you can reinitiate that later. So there's a very nice option, and what is very important, you have complete steps what you did and what you need to do next, and so on and so on.
Probably stop. It's important just to have some kind of database consistency. I mean, if you talk about the SAP context, yeah.
I mean, you are moving to another region, you need to stop it. I mean,
of course,
how
yes, yeah.
Because you are physically moving bits from one region to another region.
Yeah.
I mean, currently, maybe in the future we'll have something like that. But I mean, this is not like you suggesting. This is something like live migration between regions. No, it's not. It's simply moving from one point to another point. Huh? So assumption is that you understand that you need to stop your landscape. Let's say it like that, and move it to another region. Huh? Okay. This is one part. Another part is that it's also going that direction. Is also part of this that overview where I mentioned there's some tool for migration, and I have seen that many times people are say, "Hey, I read that we can now use Azure Site Recovery between two zones, but it's not working for me." And in most cases, if you see now, I'm selecting one virtual machine. And I'm going to disaster recovery page, which is actually Azure Site Recovery part. And now I can select how to do this disaster recovery. And my availability zone disaster recovery or replication is disabled. And sometimes people say, hey, it is not working. The reason why it's disabled, because if we go to Oreo for this machine, we'll see that this machine is not part of availability zone. So you cannot move to another availability zone because that machine is not part of any availability zone. So what you need to do first, and you need to be sure that your, for example, might test another machine is part of one of availability zone. And then when you go to disaster recovery, you will see this option is enabled. So it is not bug in our UI or somewhere else. It's simply that option. So if you want to move something to another availability zone, that virtual machine must be part of already one of availability zones. So you cannot move to availability zone from nothing. Currently, maybe we'll have something like that you can automatically move the virtual machines into availability zone, which are not part already in availability zone today. Yeah? So maybe something
I think this is kind of in a preview mode, some functionality.
Because I know, Goran, that you have a script for that. Yeah, you have script.
Yeah, there is a script, but there is some preview coming, which is maybe just a preview for now. So it needs to be checked, the details, how everything is done. Yeah.
So this is a part of that. And I think what is very good fit for complete story is Backup Center. And Backup Center, if you play with backup today, you'll probably go in this direction. You'll somehow select your virtual machine. You will go, or if you're going over portal, I mean, if you want to control what is happening in the same story, you will select the backup. You will do the backup. This machine is already selected, but if I select I'm selecting the so-called a backup vault. This is container where all my backup is going to. And then I will start the backup based on my selected default policy. And somehow, if you want to see what is the status, you will go to recovery service vault, and you need to say, oh my God, where's my recovery service vault? It's probably here. It's okay, but it's somehow very difficult to understand where is your backup. But now Backup Center is actually UI where you see overview in your tenant, cross subscription, selected subscription, all your backups in one dashboard. And this is, thanks God, very nice. Yeah. And now you can see, you can trigger your backup instance. You see the backup policy in one place. You can see your vaults, or list of your vaults, what you have across your subscriptions. Yeah. So you can see what you have in which subscription and what you are using. And of course, you can see backup jobs. Yeah. So you can, from one perspective, see, okay, what is happening from your cross subscription in one tenant with your backup. And of course, you can start backup. You can control what is the start of backup. I mean, now you are going in screens which are already existing screens, but you somehow need to go from over your virtual machine UI, or you need to go from backup vault UI. So it's not so nice. But now in central Backup Center overview, everything is there. So I like it.
Cool.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So do I have anything else on the list, Holger, or I think it's everything? Now, I think it's your turn to show us a little bit more about Logic Apps, I think.
Then let's quickly do this. Yeah. So one of the announcements from Ignite was, sorry, I just let me try to share again. One of the announcements from Ignite was around logic apps, and that you can actually now run your logic apps also on-prem. And that is something that I found really, really interesting, because typically I go to the Azure portal, I use the logic apps designer there and create my logic apps, which is all fine. But sometimes it can be either you're not connected, or you want to test something locally, and especially then if you want to use it in GitHub in a code repository, then that was always very complicated. And now there's this possibility to really, from within Visual Studio Code, and there's a nice blog, and we'll obviously link to the blog again how this is done. But now from Visual Studio Code, I can actually start to create a logic app. And of course, this doesn't look like a logic app, but actually there's a designer that you can just, so I can just go here, open in designer, and then I really see the different blocks that I'm also used to from the Azure portal. I can take a look here, I can configure them here. I can also, if I would add a new action in here, then I can just search for all the actions available.
Cool. Nice.
This is really, really nice. And it gets even better. Let me actually, I mean, this is still in preview, and I have to admit in some areas it still feels like preview. So let me quickly remove this again. But then when you're ready, and this is what I've done here already, you can really literally run it on-prem. So I needed to prepare my system here a little. I needed to create a storage emulator and install some additional tools. But now this is really, I mean, it's just firing up here locally on my machine. And basically, as you can see, I'm just waiting for an HTTP request. Then I'm sending something to a webhook, and I just provide a response. But what you can see here is this is now listening on localhost. So basically, if I switch over to my browser, I have this URL here, localhost, and obviously here's the whole certification and keys to call this URL. So I'll just do this. I'll execute the service.
Standard human readable URL. Yeah.
Yes. And then so what I've done, let me quickly, I'm just putting here a response. I'm just saying message sent to webhook, and I'm returning here the timestamp. That's exactly what is done here. Message sent to webhook. And actually, if I switch over here to this webhook, then you can see this is the content that was sent. So I just again, if I switch back to my logic app, I was just calling here this webhook site, and I was just putting this body in my the timestamp hello world in the body, and that's what you can see here really in this webhook. So I mean, obviously this is a very, very simple logic app, but for me the beautiful thing now is that first of all I can use it in Visual Studio Code. I really have the content in my here in my file system, so I can use also a GitHub repository where I would also put everything there. Then we could have multiple developers obviously using the very same GitHub repo and stuff like that. I can test it locally, and if I'm ready, I can also just publish this to my Azure portal. So it's really a nice story that we enable now developers also locally. Start there, publish it to Azure, collaborate with other developers. So I think this is, I mean, it's in preview, but it's really a beautiful step to enable developers also.
So one question, when you say deploy, can I connect, let's call it like that, connect this to already existing logic apps and do somehow some kind of reverse engineering to get what I already developed there here and just continue developing directly here?
So that's a very good question. I tried to do this, but I couldn't make it work. And there's actually a differentiation right now between logic apps and logic apps in preview. So I guess this is not there yet. Maybe it will come at some point in time. But yeah, even though this is already a very good start, I would say.
It's okay. Perfect. No.
Cool.
I mean, I like, I think in the future, probably, what we need in Visual Studio Code, we just need a Teams client and mail client, and we don't need anything else. We don't need more. Okay, Word maybe.
Yeah, we will embed Visual Studio Code in Teams, and then you just have Teams, and then everything is done.
Yeah. Or embedding the logic apps in the Teams at the end, which is
Yeah, nice, very nice.
Cool.
Great.
Good. Cool. So that was just a very brief excursus into the Logic Apps world, in the new Logic Apps world. I think then we're done. I think we had some nice demos.
Shall we mention the Gen 2 VMs, for example?
Oh, sure, we forgot that
quickly.
actually. Sorry.
Yeah,
you're right.
No problem. So let me also share the screen. I mean, people are usually they heard about the Gen 2, which is a bit kind of a relatively newer concept. In the beginning, there was just a Gen 1, and with MV2 VMs came the Gen 2. And Gen 2 was basically enabling us to run those really bigger VMs, which can address this bigger amount of RAM, So currently, here's the list of the different VMs which supports the Gen 2 as well, right? So it's always interesting, okay, why would that be of interest, because some VMs type like MV1 at the moment, and or maybe those E series or different one, can be deployed both as Gen 1 and as Gen 2. So one interesting scenario was, initially, maybe let's use a HANA as a use case. Typically, we had the MV1, which on the beginning was just Gen 1. And then at a certain point of time, customers say, oh, I need more RAM or more CPU. I would love to convert to MV2, which was at that time just a Gen, or is currently only the Gen 2. They couldn't do it, because there was no possibility to convert the VMs from Gen 1 to the Gen 2, meaning they would really need to go trouble, let's say in a HANA case, HANA replication or whatever, like from any to any hardware. So the idea is basically here, because HANA also support multiple of those VM times, E series, MV1 and MV2. Basically, the idea is always deploy, at least if you do it initially, as a Gen 2 initially. So if you do this, basically if you would go just to deploy, some VM type, you can, for some of those supported VM type, you can choose, If you deploy as a Gen 2, then you have ability, especially in those HANA case, let's say, resize the MV1 2, from 128 to the higher of the MV2 type, So just as a kind of small tip, it's good to think it at the moment in the advance, if you start a new deployment, Maybe also one interesting tip, it's just quickly on NetApp, it's kind of relatively new. It's in GA, the dual protocol, So from NFS and SMB. Dual meaning you export, NFS and Azure file, they support both protocols, but the customer request is sometimes they want to access the same file, the same volume. Use case could be a transport, from Windows and Linux. This is a bit relatively new, on a Azure NetApp. If you would go to just quickly, if you would say I want to create a new volume, and I would just need to also say I would need some subnet, which I didn't create it in the beginning. But then if you would go to the protocol part, you can say NFS, and okay, it's 2 version. You can say only SMB, or you can say a double protocol, okay, meaning the same volume would be accessed from both NFS and SMB client. Again, currently it's an NFS 3. The question is, okay, does that really fulfill the requirements needed? But in principle, you have that flexibility basically to have the same file and export for both Windows and Linux. As an example would be, let's say, a transport protocol, right? Transport being accessed by the different VMs. Maybe also approach would be, even if you have only one protocol, either SMB or NFS, both Windows client machine and the Linux Windows can mount the NFS, Linux can mount the SMB over the Samba. So that might be also an approach, maybe as a, I mean, if you have let's say you are on Azure files and you don't have at the moment double protocol in the same volume. Yeah, so that may be something to think about. So maybe that's just a kind of small tips,
cool, absolutely.
tricks. Yeah.
No, I think that can be definitely very helpful. Good, perfect.
Yeah, great.
Then I think we can close again this session.
So maybe before closing, we always, I think, forget to invite people to send us some suggestions. You know, if they want to, that we're going together with our guests, yeah,
sure.
Much more deeper in some topics, that we are maybe analyzing some already scenario or customer scenario, which we can take from our public use cases and just you know, try to, with our guests, try to explain what was the difficulties in such projects, what we can do better, what we learn, and so on. So maybe we can so please, if you have any questions, or if you want to from us that we present something, please just write down, yeah? And then we will try to and we will try to organize something for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the good thing is that we have quite a lot of guests already lined up. So I think the next 4 or 5 weeks we already have guests in the queue, so to say. But we're obviously very interested in any additional thoughts, ideas that we should discuss. So yeah, let us know.
Yeah, last night Bill Gates called me and said, "Sorry, you need to wait till next year." So I'm not sure.
Okay, then next year.
So then you woke up, right?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Great. Then thanks everyone, and talk to you again next week.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.